Good afternoon, all. Well, I just want to spend 3 to 5 minutes to introduce to you first this Pear Deck app. And you can also use this in your classes as a companion while you are doing your lecture during class. And you can also use this as a way to for recitation purposes during a lecture, for example, no, when you start going online. So can just everybody here in the group go to joinpd.com on a separate device, better on a separate device, maybe a phone or an iPad or any tablet. Joinpd.com and then encode the code YOUPA. So let's go directly now to the the discussion for this afternoon, which is transitioning to online distance learning or to hybrid learning. Because, like what Michelle mentioned earlier, that we are already in the new now. I don't want to use the term new normal because it seems like when you say new normal, this is going to be a permanent thing, a permanent change. But we understand as educators that classroom learning is still the most ideal setup for formal education. And because we are in a very unusual situation right now that our school age, because if the country decides to put a town or city or the whole nation into GCQ, into a general community quarantine, we understand that school age children are not going to be allowed to be or to go to public places. And that includes schools. So until maybe September, hopefully earlier or maybe even later, we'll see, no? And this online distance learning is probably the best solution that we have for continuing in sustainable K-12 education. And let's do some real talk right now. We really have to start some form of schooling early on, either July or August, because we need our enrollees also, because we need to also give salaries for our teachers. Because if we don't have enrollees, there's no money in the school. We have already probably maxed out our budget, our funds, when paying our teachers for during the duration of the the quarantine. So we need some funds too. I mean, just real talk, no? So other than that, we have to really consider options in order to survive financially and also still continue and sustain the quality education to our students. Some people have initial impressions of online distance learning as not equivalent to quality education. We can still give quality education to our students via online distance learning or via hybrid learning or whatever mixed mode, blended learning. These are all interchangeable terms for our students. And quality education, it really depends not on the tools that we use, but it depends on the teacher's creativity, the passion of the teacher, and the students' also internal self-motivation to learn. Now, these are all the factors for learning to happen, for education to happen. So what we're just trying to do here is to solve that problem of distance, no? And more on this distance learning, because our students are required to stay home because they're school age children and they cannot go out, and the school of course is a few kilometers or even 20 kilometers away from their home. And we have this what you call transactional distance, and this transactional distance has been this term has been around since 1972. And Mr. Michael Moore is the one who devised this framework or definition of transactional distance. In any form of education, we also have this transactional distance. And what are the aspects? One is physical distance, obviously, because the home is far away from the school. That's already a physical distance. Psychological distance, when we cannot ask directly our students and see them face to face, see their facial expressions, and we cannot identify whether our student is feeling okay, having problems, or is just happy. Communicative distance, and it's our students without the internet, without any phones, it's difficult to communicate. So we have to find ways to be able to communicate with our students. And another distance is temporal distance, because we don't know whether the students will be able to attend, for example, an online distance learning. Maybe they have to be able to access that video, that class some other time. Hmm? So that's that temporal distance that we have. And what we're trying to do now is, because our students are at home and the school is far away from their home, we want to narrow down this transactional distance. And how do we narrow down transactional distance? Is we use technology. And this is where educational technology comes in. No? And at this point, for the 5 people who are here, 5 or 7 people in Pear Deck, I will now move my slide to the next. And let's answer this question. Who is the proponent of transactional distance? So you can click on the bottom link that says answer question and then choose your answer. Wow, very good. So everybody got the correct answer. Good job. So this is what I like about Pear Deck and other apps like Nearpod and also Mentimeter. But I think Pear Deck is right now is the most reliable. So good job. So you can do this as a recitation. Even if I have 100 students online right now, I could use this. And I will be able to tell already how many of my students did not understand the discussion or not. No, even if you're online or even offline, if your students have access to the internet inside the school, this is going to be a great companion also for students. So again, we want to narrow down to this transactional distance using technology. And this is what's happening right now with you using Pear Deck. I'm not even seeing your faces because I'm projecting my screen right now, but still I'm able to interact with you, even not seeing you physically, but at least interact with you using this tool. So I assume that most of us here are also administrators and or at least decision makers in our school, coordinators or whatnot. And here are some guiding principles for principals. I just wanted to play around with the word principal and principal. For us, as we try to decide whether we will go full online distance learning or we'll just go to hybrid mixed mode, meaning there are days that their students go to school, there are days that you ask your students to be at home. So these are the 3 guiding principles. Transform, don't transfer. What does that mean? Transform, don't transfer. When we say transfer, what we want to, our initial reaction is that we want to transfer the classroom to the home setting. It's like converting what we're doing inside the classroom and bringing it online. And that it's not going to be possible 100%. We can probably transfer 50% of what we do inside the classroom into online setting, but not everything. 50% we have to transform. Later, I'll show you what I mean more about transforming the classroom for online learning. And another principle, in Latin, non multa sed multum. What is in English, not many, but much. So there are a lot of considerations right now whether to still be able to cover all the topics with the online distance learning setup or the hybrid learning setup. I'm going to tell you now that it's not going to be possible to be able to cover the same amount of topics as we would in a normal classroom setting and in full online distance learning. But definitely the much will be there. We won't be able to cover the many, but we will cover the much. We won't be able to cover quantity, but we can still maintain quality education. And that's one thing that we have to start embracing about technology, that we can still deliver quality education in this kind of setup. And another very important principle for principals is Maslow before Bloom. I think we all are aware about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Bloom's taxonomy. So we have to first address the Maslow needs of our students before we start demanding schoolwork from them. So in our simple way, we can just simply ask them how they're doing, just to check in on them once in a while. That's enough Maslow that we could do before we start demanding schoolwork. And when students bring up concerns about not being able to do schoolwork because of some problems in the internet or technology, then that's where our Maslow starts becoming important. We apply the Maslow and then we bloom. All right? I love that. No, we Maslow before you bloom. So that these are the three principles that will guide us now as we try to make this new policy for hybrid learning in our respective schools. And let's start with the hard part of this transitioning to online distance learning or hybrid learning in the new now. And what is the hard part? Everything here on this slide is the hard part. So this is a simple framework. I just adapted this from Picciano 2017. And I just simplified this and use some terms that are familiar to us and that are applicable to our situation here in the country. So basically 6 aspects that we have to make policies for. I'm gonna tell you now, when we go and decide to go full online or hybrid for the next school year, it's almost like putting up a new school. It's like putting up a new set of policies for teaching, a new set of policies for technology, a new set of pedagogy that we have to train our teachers in, a new style of assessment, a different focus for and giving importance for self-directed learning and for social and emotional learning. So these things I will be discussing in the next slides. And don't worry, Michelle will be sending you a copy of the handout. So you can also take screenshots if you like or take a picture. No worries. Information should be free. No? I just make sure that you give credit as in the same way that I also give credit to the people and the references that I use for this presentation. So let's start. So we'll start first with the first 3. I grouped them together because they are related. And aside from that, it forms part of this TPAC model. So if you're going into EdTech, and everybody at this point should already start researching about EdTech or start building that interest for education technology, Puente Dura is the one who drew this framework, and this is basic for edtech people, no? TPAC. So what's this TPAC? It's the combination and overlapping of 3 things, no? Technology, content, and pedagogical knowledge. So for hybrid learning and online learning, I want to focus on the 3 combinations: TK, TPK, and TCK. TK refers to the teacher knowledge of how to use tech, how to use a smartphone to download an app, how to use the smartphone or a computer to browse the web, etc. Basic. TPK is the teacher's knowledge on how to use tech for teaching. How can I use my laptop to aid my teaching, to aid my students' learning? How do I use my smartphone to do that? And the TCK is the teacher knowing how to use tech to deliver the expected content and competencies as what DepEd prescribes or what our school prescribes, because sometimes our school demands more competencies and more content uh, than what is prescribed by DepEd. So these are the things that we will be discussing. And this TPAC model brings us to those 3 things that I mentioned in the framework for distance learning: instructional design, curriculum design, and technology. So let's discuss each. Instructional design basically is your teacher training. If you're an administrator, a decision maker, This is one of the first things that you will have to do, is to prepare your inset, to prepare the topics for your teacher training program. So you have to, for example, you need teacher training on how to use a learning management system, teacher training on how to do flipped learning. What is flipped learning? Flipped learning is recording, the teacher recording the video, himself or herself teaching the lesson in a video, and then using it as an assignment instead of the seat work or the homework being done at home. Baliktad, the lecture is done at home, and then the seat work and the homework is done in school. So that's the technique of flipped learning, which can also be used in hybrid learning. Holding video conferences, training on how to use Zoom, how to use the different features of Zoom. Did you know that in Zoom, you can annotate this presentation too? And other things, you have a whiteboard. Your teacher can also use the whiteboard feature in Zoom. So you have to have teacher training for these things. And you have to also inform your teachers about the concept of blended learning. What's important about blended learning in relation to full online distance learning and hybrid learning are the two words. Two words, very important two words: synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous learning activities. I don't know if you're also the same people who attended my webinar on Facebook Live, but I discussed this during that webinar. Synchronous are the learning activities that are done simultaneously by the teacher and the student. A lecture using Zoom, for example, is what you call as a synchronous activity. And the asynchronous activities are the ones that are not in sync, no? Meaning activities that do not require the teacher's presence. Therefore, those activities are self-paced by the student, independent learning activities. So those are the two differences. Part of your instructional design also is teacher training regarding familiarity with online learning tools that they can use for formative assessments, for giving feedback to students, and other supplemental learning. Your teacher training, this is where your introduction to Pear Deck, for example, will fall under. Teaching them how to use Pear Deck, teaching them how to use Google Forms, and other formative assessments. So teacher training, instructional design. That's one. Next. So this is the two of three of the first three topics that I wanted to discuss in the framework: curriculum design. And curriculum design, we already have a curriculum design, but what we need to do is some curriculum adjustments. We need to start focusing more on the competencies instead of topics. Or sometimes, as I think currently, we do not distinguish topics from learning competencies, but I think this is the time, this is an opportune time to really distinguish the difference between learning competencies and topics. Competencies focus more on the skills, and you can have a lot of competencies just under one topic. So you have to focus more on what skill do I want to teach my students right now? Because topics are searchable nowadays. There are a lot of resources online that the students can just get about the topic. But the competency, the teacher is the one who can teach that competency. And one thing about curriculum design and these things, I will mention again in assessment, from knowledge identification to knowledge creation. So our curriculum has to, and who makes the curriculum? We, teachers, administrators, decision makers of the school. We have to have a paradigm shift from knowledge identification to knowledge creation. This is one thing, one benefit of going into online learning, online distance learning, or hybrid learning, because we cannot anymore focus on knowledge identification, because this is, as I said earlier, students can already identify things just by going to Google, to Mr. Google, and they can Google all the information that they want. And when they're at home, they have access to all of these knowledge, to all of these information. So what we need is knowledge creation, because if we can ask the students to create knowledge, it's not something that they can Google. The summative assessments in our curriculum should measure instead process and understanding in relation to the second item. No, we have different test types, the knowledge, process, understanding. So we have to focus more on the process and understanding parts. I think that's understood. And then our outputs should be relevant for them to be engaging. And how do we make our outputs relevant? We have to make them authentic. The outputs have to be relevant, should be related, should be relatable, no, related to the situation that they are in. For example, the output should be something that will help people, like create a poster and inform everyone on social media about the dangers of COVID, or discuss the history of COVID, or analyze a graph of the COVID trend in the Philippines. Help them understand for math, help them understand what it means to flatten the curve. What is this curve? Imagine if we can use them, tell them how to do those, how to foresee, to based on a trend, and then yeah, foresee what's going to happen next in the next 3 months using math. Why not using statistics? That would be great, and that would be engaging. Consider having more performance tasks than written works. Written works meaning questions that you will ask in process and understanding. Performance tasks can be self-paced. Written works are very difficult to ensure that they are cheat proof or even parent proof. Other things about curriculum design and curriculum adjustments, you really have to change your class schedule. It should be a mix of synchronous and asynchronous activities. So here's a sample at the bottom. So the morning could be focused more on the synchronous classes using your video conference apps, Zoom, Google Hangouts. And in the afternoon, it could be dedicated for asynchronous activities, not really classes, but asynchronous activities that the teacher posts in the learning management system. Here's a sample schedule that you may want to not really follow, but this is just a suggestion. This could already spark an idea. No, I'm sharing this just for that purpose. Here you have in the morning all the synchronous activities. I suggest that you can keep Friday free. And what is the Friday? Friday could be used for the summative assessment day if you wish, but you could have your own structure. And in between these synchronous classes, you need a break, because you cannot expect the students to be online straight and to like they were inside a classroom, because we have this what we call screen time health. And part of this screen time is if a student or anyone, you and I included, if we are facing the screen straight for 2 hours, 3, 4 hours, it's really going to affect our eyesight and also affect our circadian rhythm. What's the circadian rhythm? It's our body's rhythm to respond that if it's already the evening, we are already starting to relax, and our hormones, the melatonin hormones, are already activated and preparing us to go to sleep, to be able to rest. So screen time affects that circadian rhythm. So you can read up more on that if you like. Circadian rhythm, CIRCADIAN. So this is how I suggest that we schedule our activities. Put breaks so that the students don't have to face the screen straight. No? In fact, I also recommend that the periods be shorter. 1 hour for a synchronous activity might be too much. You may want to have 45 minutes And the 15 minutes of this is just for small talk and for social emotional learning and wellness and chika chika and check in by the teacher with the students. But the lecture should be limited to just 45 minutes. And the 15 minutes for coming in, joining the session, etc., etc. And then after lunch, you have your asynchronous activities. So in the afternoon, the student is not anymore facing the teacher. The afternoon is spent for independent learning. So it's crucial that the student or the teacher leaves activities for the students to do in the afternoon. And you can also use the afternoon activities as consultation period. Teachers should make themselves available in the afternoon for any questions from the students. You can also schedule that. For example, in Araling Panlipunan Asynchronous, the AP teacher should be online from 2 to 3. But beyond 3 o'clock, the teacher is not anymore required to respond to the student. But of course, the teacher can still do if he or she has time to respond. But this is helping the student put some structure into his day. And things to consider also when making the schedule. Again, always remember, classroom learning is not equivalent to distance learning. So if you have to have the time in English in this schedule, English is 2 or 3 times a week. So you have to have it. No, I mean in school we have English 5 times a week. So in our schedule we place 2.5 hours a week in our asynchronous, in our online learning class schedule. So that. And again, non multa sed multum, not many but much. And then you could assign Friday as your summative assessment day. Again, policies. How many assessments can you have in a day? Policies. So now let's go to technology. In technology, first things first, if you're really going to go hybrid learning or full online distance learning, you need a learning management system. And this learning management system is your way to deliver the content and the materials, the resources to your students, the activities. It is through this learning management system. You cannot survive online learning without a learning management system. So you need to choose. And you have to also ensure that the teachers have the devices and are in their connectivity to the internet. Same with the students. And what you can do is, since our teachers are not school age children and hopefully they're not also the senior students, they can still go to school, no? And this in school on campus, you should be able to provide that connectivity for your teachers and the devices if you have the desktops in school and whatnot. And for your students, for your scholars, that's another discussion. Also, in technology, you have to ensure awareness of the Data Privacy Act because they're online and it's so easy to just share personal information online. You have to also inform everyone, including the parents, about the Data Privacy Act. This one is very important nowadays because I'm sure, I don't know if you're victims of the phishing scams of banks, etc. So we have to be careful. Also, we have to teach proper digital citizenship to our students. So just about the learning management system, there are several out there, but these are my 3 popular ones: Edmodo, Google Classroom, and Canvas. Edmodo is similar to Facebook, so easy to use because it's so familiar. It also has some built-in quizzes that you can use within Edmodo. Google Classroom, what I like about Google Classroom and Canvas is that you can organize your lessons by topics. And Canvas, it has built-in quizzes also. And you can create an idea bank and question bank, and the questions can shuffle and differ from one student to another with Canvas. Google Classroom, I think the integration with Google Meet and the other Google apps is just helpful. And regarding responsible digital citizenship, so you have to create your policies. And this one just adapted from what I saw online, and these are the things also that we're using in school, no? So like I will stand up and say no to cyberbullying, or I'll keep my device safe and secure at all times. These are responsible digital citizenship policies for classroom, because they bring their iPads to school in where I teach. But you can create your own reminders, no, for digital citizenship. So again, we just finished the curriculum design, instructional design, and technology in this whole framework. Right now, next, I want to focus on assessment. This one is very crucial because we need to measure whether our students are learning, whether we are really giving quality education to our students, right? And how do we assess when distance is a consideration, is a concern? And I already mentioned earlier about this under curriculum design, that we have to move from knowledge identification to knowledge creation. So our assessments should be geared towards that, measuring our students' ability to create knowledge. So this is where our graphic organizers will be most helpful. Venn diagrams, our charts, our tables, our graphs. That this is where they would be most helpful in our creating assessments. Our graded assessments, our summative assessments should measure more process and understanding. And output should be relevant for them to be engaging. I think I mentioned already some examples that you could do earlier, something related to COVID-19, related to the pandemic, like studying graphs, interpreting graphs. There's so many graphs about COVID-19. If you can ask your students to develop, imagine developing critical thinking skills and interpretation and inference by asking them to evaluate a graph. And we're teaching our students valuable skills for the real world. And this is what if there's any silver lining to this online learning, it's really that, because we're forced to jump ship, so to speak, to 21st century learning, into real life learning, into authentic learning. So this is something that we can welcome, no? This is already our springboard to 21st century learning, to online learning. And once you see how technology can do all of these things in our education setup, there's no turning back to traditional after. So this is one thing. If there's any really bright side, this is the bright side, that we are really forced to really just measure what is relevant, what is authentic, what is real life, no? Because and then part of it, no, in terms of assessments, consider having more performance tasks than written works. Someone in the earlier session, someone asked, I'm an English teacher and I have a lot of writing exercises. How can I do performance tasks? And I clarified that I'm also an English teacher, and writing an essay for me is a performance task because it's an application of the writing skill. I'm not measuring any knowledge. I'm not measuring any questions about how to write. Actual application of skills fall under performance tasks. Written works, everything that is theoretical. So here's my authentic learning framework for school for designing transfer tasks. So basically, if you can meet all of these things, all of these conditions in this framework, you are already you're already on the right path towards authentic learning. No? Authentic learning is composed of 21st century skills, the use of technology, and knowledge. So what we're doing here now in the hybrid learning or full online distance learning is the remote or shared screen and the research. So there's a lot of focus on research during this full online distance learning mode that we will be in. So 21st century skills, communication, collaboration, cross-cultural understanding, and creativity. These are just the 4 C's. There are actually 7, but here I just highlighted the most practical ones. And if you're able to already demand these skills from the students, not all 4, it could be just 2 or 3. If you can do all four, why not? If you're meaning you're already developing 21st century skills in your students. And in terms of technology, if you're you're able to give your students the time to be productive, be efficient, to be time aware, and to use technology to become more goal oriented, then you're already preparing them for career. Look at all of these skills. These are the skills that actually an employee, a worker, a future yeah, a leader would need, no, in real life. So just focus on this framework. And again, don't worry, the slides will be shared with you by Michelle. Here's a quote I took from the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership. They created this primer for online distance learning because everyone in Australia went to online because of this pandemic. And this is what I like about, or what I took away, no, from the from the document. Let me read it for you. It is also important to remember that there are positives to home-based education. Quality education is not always structured, academic or scholastic, and learning occurs in many different contexts. Home life can provide opportunities for students to engage with nature, bond with family, learn civic responsibility, and focus on social health. If I may bring you to the attention of the last four things enumerated here, you are sure to hit on authentic learning if your outputs, your performance tasks, your projects are geared towards these last four. Imagine if you are able to ask your students to create an output that allows them to engage with nature. Imagine for biology, they take a picture of all the plants that are available that they can see in their garden. Some insects that they see in their garden, things that they cannot do when they're in school because we're scared to make them leave the classroom. But here they're at home. Imagine if those are the kinds of activities that we're asking from them. If you have an output that allows them to bond with their family, this is so precious, very real, and very relevant for them. And if you have an output also that teaches them civic responsibility, they make a poster of something, no, like a poster promoting civic responsibility, or how they are able to help their garbage collector in the village, for example. So, or a project that helps them focus on social health. Imagine how important education is, even more that they are doing their education at home. No, there are things that we thought could never happen inside the classroom, but is possible only when they're learning at home and with technology. So I think it's really all a matter of assessments. We really have to be creative in thinking and rethinking about the assessments that we're going to ask from our students. And these are very exciting times for us educators. And talking about and speaking about assessments, no, of course, if you still want to do the typical process understanding assessments for formative, not recommended for summative, because it's not cheat proof, no. Formative meaning we're preparing our students for a graded test. So these are my recommendations, my favorite formative tests online: Google Forms, Quizlet, Quizzes, and Wiser.me, because these websites can already give the student feedback whether the student answered correctly or incorrectly, or even give an explanation to why his or her answer is incorrect. And of course, you could still go for the traditional PDF, no, the traditional pen and paper test, but it's very difficult for the teacher to check, especially if you're going to do a full online distance learning, because in PDF it's hard to annotate. And the best way to annotate the PDF is using a tablet. And if you have a tablet and a stylus at that, so that you can use your stylus to write notes on the PDF. But otherwise, Google Forms, Quizlet quizzes, and Wiser, very easy. And let's go back again to that slide on the whole framework. So we're done with curriculum design, technology, pedagogy, and assessment. We're down to our last two, social and emotional learning and self-directed learning. So this is what I call, instead of the hard part, this is the heart part, no? So this is the hard part of full online distance learning or hybrid learning. So what is social and emotional learning? I think some of you are already very familiar with SEL or SEL. And we are doing this because we want to design for social interaction. Because imagine our students are stuck at home. They don't have social life. They cannot go out to the malls and go out with their friends. So school is that opportunity that you give to the students to be with their friends, to be with their peers. And we cannot deprive our students of that opportunity. In fact, a lot of our students consider going to school an escape from from the problems that they probably encounter at home. And they just want to forget about their makulit na kapatid or something like that. So they want to go to school and enjoy. So we have to still provide that. So we need to establish teacher presence. And this is where synchronous activities are very crucial in a full online distance learning mode. We have to have the synchronous lectures because this is where the students can do the interaction. Homeroom period is very crucial in developing the social and emotional learning of our students. So the homeroom teacher's role is very important in these times. They cannot belittle their role as advisors. Find ways for students to interact with their classmates, interact with experts and other adults in the community. And being at home, you have access to the experts and who are the best experts in our field, no? For example, if my discussion is about business, no, I can just invite somebody's parent and be part of the Zoom conference, and I already have an expert. It's relevant, it's real. Whereas if it were in the classroom, it's very difficult to invite the parent to come to school. But now they're just at home. Maybe these parents are also working from home. It's easier to invite them. They're accessible. And other adults in the community as well. Provide opportunities for self-awareness. A lot of reflection has to be incorporated into our assessments because the reflection is a key skill nowadays to be able to survive this kind of almost prison-like, so to speak, no, prison-like situation, especially for our students because they're not allowed to go out. No, they're not as mobile as we are once the ECQ is lifted. Self-directed learning, part of the heart part, no, because this is real life learning. Imagine if our students develop independent learning skills and wayfinding. Imagine if we already retransition or return to the classroom and they have these independent learning skills with them. That's going to be, this is major investment. And this is something that we will have to look forward to returning to the classroom. In fact, I'm afraid that the students might get used to independent learning of the online and hybrid learning that we have been doing maybe for the first quarter until September, that they might find classroom learning already boring and they want to go home, or even lectures of one lecture after another they might find it already difficult. They might miss it, but they might readjust again, no? But when we start returning to the classroom, I hope that we can sustain this independent learning, these skills, self-directed learning skills in our students. And this will only be possible if we sustain project-based assessments. Because if it's a project-based, they can pace themselves, no? So again, sorry, homeroom activities that help students develop productivity skills like scheduling and creating to-do lists. So these are all going to be new to them, maybe except for our honor students. I think most honor students have a very structured study habit and scheduling routine. And this is something that we have to start teaching also the rest of the students, no, not just the honor students, not just the top students, but we have to start teaching our students to start scheduling, even just for the day, and listing the to-do things, their tasks for the day, and help them do weekly planning. Weekly planning is enough. Monthly might be too much and overwhelming for the students. And then also teach them to do some to-do lists. Very basic, but very real life, very relevant to career life. Teachers, of course, in order to be able to teach self-directed learning, teachers should model this level of organization. So if the teacher also proposes weekly calendars, the homeroom advisors, for example, or the subject teachers give a weekly calendar for their students. If the students are always exposed to weekly calendars, they'll start adapting the same habit and hopefully use it also for their purpose. No? If the teachers also keep using to-do lists for the tasks that they have to do, they see it often, they're exposed to it, then well and good. Another part of the part of the SEL is actually community building, especially for those who are administrators here in this group. We cannot stop promoting our school culture. We need to find ways to promote this using online bulletin boards. Maybe after this, as a homework, you just try to discover Google Jamboard. You can share this to the community by a link, and you can post things here that you want to focus. It's just explore. You have to constantly update your school website if you have. If before you only update it two times a year, now you have to update it often because you need to also communicate to the parents what's up with school and what LMS that you're using. This is how you will be able to communicate to parents and to prospective students. And if you have a social media page, constantly update that too. And have messages from the principals, videos if possible. And have your online assemblies too. Keep it small, maybe per level and or per class. Have some assembly. This is so convenient with being online. So I think we were able to cover everything in the framework: curriculum design, technology, pedagogy, assessment, self-directed learning, and social and emotional learning. So those are our last two. And just want to show you in this slide, in school where I work, where I teach, where I'm the EdTech director of, we are building this policy guidelines. So like what I said earlier in the presentation, it's like creating a new school. So this is everything here in this table of contents are new. All these are policies, all these are definitions. Hardware requirements for full online distance learning. The how are we going to decide who for example will we be lending laptops to or pocket Wi-Fi's to. This is where we also detail our home support. What is the role of the home in full online distance learning? We also detailed here sample class schedules, uh, scenarios, possible modules, monitoring plan for the grade level. We also detailed here how to do lectures, guidelines on how to do lectures, what the teacher needs to wear, what the background should be, etc., etc. What video conferencing tool to use is acceptable. We defined here also consultation hours, policies on what happens in synchronous activities, what is considered proper behavior when you're online, and what are the sanctionable behaviors. So we have to be able to identify. This is long. This is a growing table of contents and assessments and grading. This is just page 1 of the table of contents. I have a page 2. So this document is in Google Docs, and all the administrators are shared collaborators in this document. So we keep on revising, commenting on these policies until we perfect it. It's really like putting up a new school, no? But overwhelming, but doable, but possible. If we are geared towards that educational goal of providing quality education to our students, all these, although very difficult, all these we do with a lot of passion and joy. That is very important. And again, let's go back to the principles. Non multa sed multum. Not many, but much. So we have to dispel or quell the doubt of some teachers, some parents that online education is not quality education. That's one thing that we have to transfer to our stakeholders, no? Transform, do not translate. So we cannot anymore do what we used to do in the classroom. We have to start transforming education, transforming our assessments, transforming our pedagogy. You know, those are the two things that we need to transform really here. And again, Maslow before Bloom. You have to address first the physical and psychological needs of our students before you can start demanding academic and intellectual rigor from our students. No? So these are our references.